This morning, Victoria expected to record one of its deadliest days, along with hundreds of new cases, in a troubling sign that COVID-19 continues to spread. A class action launched against the operators of the Ruby Princess cruise ship as lawyers seek compensation over the fiasco. And Queenslanders told they travel to New South Wales at their own risk and could face quarantine at their own expense.
This is 7 News with Sally Bowrey.
Good morning. Victoria is expected to record one of its deadliest days in the coronavirus pandemic, with an unconfirmed 6 deaths and hundreds of new cases today. We'll cross to a media conference with the Premier, Daniel Andrews, in just a moment. But first, Georgia Comensoli is in Melbourne. Georgia, the lockdown could be extended if case numbers continue to stay high.
Sally, Melbourne has been in lockdown for 2 weeks and our case numbers have continued to rise. We're now in our second day of mandatory masks, and as people are getting used to having their face covered in public, there are now fears that they could be here to stay for 3 months. This as self-proclaimed conspiracy theorist flouts stay-at-home rules, filming herself trying to get through a police roadblock and not answering questions as to where she's travelling to or where she's come from.
Have I committed a crime? Pardon? Have I committed a crime?
No, just asking why you're travelling today.
Have I committed a crime?
Oh, you can keep going.
Thank you.
Just one example of people trying to encourage others to do the wrong thing during Melbourne's lockdown, and anyone in Victoria who breaches the stay-at-home rules could cop a $1,600 fine. There's also confusion around the rules of what to do after you've been tested. Just a few months ago, if you didn't have symptoms but you did get tested, you didn't have to self-isolate. Those rules, of course, have now changed. There's also confusion on the rules of having your partner with you in maternity wards. Now, yesterday we recorded our third biggest day of COVID cases, and our Premier is due to speak at any moment. Sally?
OK, thank you very much, Georgia. And of course, we will cross to the Premier, Dan Andrews, when he does appear. New coronavirus restrictions are now in force for restaurants and clubs and cafes across New South Wales. Group bookings will be kept at 10 people. The state recorded 7 cases overnight. It comes as Shine lawyers launched a class action over the Ruby Princess cruise ship fiasco. Amber Laidler has more.
This class action has been launched against Carnival plc and Princess Cruise Lines Limited over their handling of the deadly coronavirus outbreak on board the Ruby Princess. Shine lawyers will allege the cruise ship operators knew there was a risk that passengers could contract coronavirus before the ship departed. They'll also allege they were negligent and they failed to ensure passengers were safe. Lawyers will now seek compensation on behalf of passengers, their families and the families of those who died in the federal court. All 2,700 passengers are eligible to join.
We'll be claiming for some damages for pain and suffering, damages for distress and disappointment, as well as expenses that have been incurred and loss of income as well.
An inquiry into the ill-fated cruise ship is also underway here in New South Wales. The Ruby Princess has been linked to more than 600 COVID-19 cases here in Australia and 22 deaths.
Queenslanders are being warned they cross into New South Wales at their own risk as the Sunshine State keeps a close eye on COVID-19 clusters south of the border. Katrina Blowers is at Brisbane Airport. Good morning, Katrina. Queensland travellers could face quarantine if new COVID hotspots are added to the list.
Good morning, Sally. Well, Queensland Police have just finished a press conference. They say it's been so far so good here in the Sunshine State, but they are warning that we could face tougher restrictions here, including increased lockdowns if we do see an escalation of cases. Now, from 1 a.m. this coming Monday, the Sydney suburb of Fairfield will be added to that list of known hotspots. Any travellers planning to cross the border need to make sure their border declarations are up to date with the correct information, or they face hefty fines. So far, Queensland Police have turned around 560 people who've either been in those known hotspots or haven't been able to prove that they haven't. That includes a 42-year-old man who was pulled off a bus. He then allegedly got on another bus, falsely filled out a form, and police found him there again.
Of course, if we start to see increased transmission in other areas such as New South Wales, we will review that system and determine what will happen into the future.
Now, Here at Brisbane Airport, police say that travellers coming through here are generally doing the right thing, but it can take up to an hour to be processed through those declaration points. So if you are travelling to Queensland, make sure you leave plenty of time.
OK, thanks for that, Katrina. Flexible work arrangements in response to coronavirus will continue under reforms flagged by the Treasurer to protect jobs. Live to Olivia Leeming in Canberra. Good morning, Olivia. Unions fear this will erode workers' rights.
That's their concern, though the Treasurer argues that businesses still need this flexibility, that will be crucial to Australia's economic recovery. The Treasurer will unveil major reforms to drive jobs growth in a speech this afternoon, a day after revealing Australia's facing record debt levels and the largest budget deficit since the Second
Olivia,
World War.
Apologies, I'm just going to have to interrupt. We will take you now live to Premier Daniel Andrews.
Is that yes or not? Not yet. It's all right, I'll wait.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for the daily update. First things first, there are 7,405 cases of coronavirus in Victoria. That is 300 new cases since we last updated you. 51 of those are connected to known and contained outbreaks. 249 of those are under investigation by our public health team. There are 206 Victorians in hospital. 41 of those are receiving intensive care. I am saddened to have to report that there have been a further 6 deaths as a result of this virus since we last updated you. That takes the total number of Victorians who have died because of coronavirus to 55. We'll try and provide further information as we can, but each of those are connected to an aged care setting. 3 of those individuals, I'm not quite certain on gender in terms of the notes I have, but if we can update you, we will. 3 in their 90s and 3 in their 80s. If we can update you with any further information, of course we will. In the meantime, though, we send our best wishes, our condolences, our thoughts and our prayers to the families of those 6 individuals. This will be a particularly challenging and difficult time, a very sad time for them. And I hope that there is some small measure of comfort knowing that our support and our condolences are extended to them. 24,118 tests yesterday, still a very impressive number. That's sticking around that mid-20,000s number and sometimes higher each and every day. We're very, very grateful to everybody who's coming forward to get tested. Apart from a tiny number of people, each of those have symptoms. They're doing the right thing, acting on those symptoms, coming forward, getting tested, and then, of course, they need to then isolate while they wait for their result. We're pushing as hard as we can. We're using additional laboratory capacity from around the country, from the private sector as well, to get those results as quickly as we can. But getting tested.
OK, that was the Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews there. Just to recap some of those figures, there are hundreds of new cases that have been reported. 206 Victorians are currently in hospital with COVID-19, 41 in ICU, and unfortunately there have been 6 deaths in the last 24 hours, each of those linked to an aged care facility. Let's return now live to Olivia Leeming, who is in Canberra. Good morning again to you, Olivia. I understand that a meeting of the National Cabinet is underway. Obviously, the Premier has just broken from that to give those very troubling figures about the latest in Victoria.
Yes, that is correct. And of course, high on the agenda of this National Cabinet meeting is the economic crisis after those sobering figures yesterday released by the Treasurer, revealing that debt levels reaching a record height, as well the largest budget deficit since World War II, with an extra 240,000 Australians expected to lose their jobs by Christmas. The Treasurer also insisting that those emergency changes introduced in response to the pandemic to workplace laws to give employers greater flexibility should continue to allow businesses to adjust staff hours as well as duties and where they're working. But Labor says it's an attack on workers' rights. Here's some of what they've had to say this morning.
The feedback from businesses is that's been a really important part of the recovery, having that flexibility. So what we would like to see is those IR changes continue.
A business that is doing better will be allowed to tell its workers that they have to have their hours cut and there'll be no right to negotiate. This is a direct attack on job security.
And Olivia, what are we expecting to come out of National Cabinet today?
Well, of course, they are concerned about the economic impact of particularly the outbreak in Victoria that's already cost the economy more than $3 billion this quarter. And, of course, as well, to a lesser extent, some of the clusters that we're seeing in New South Wales, the economic recovery hinging on how cases are managed from here. Sally.
OK, thank you very much. Olivia Leeming there for us live out of Canberra this morning. Residents of an apartment building in the inner Sydney suburb of Ashfield were evacuated from their homes early this morning after cracks appeared in the brickwork. Some residents pointed the finger at tunnels for a nearby toll road, but engineers have a much simpler explanation. Andrew Denny reports.
Well, emergency services are packing up here now after what was a rather tense morning for residents here at this unit complex at Ashfield in Sydney's inner west. It was just after 3:45 a.m. when Fire and Rescue declared they had concerns over the structural integrity of one of the buildings here, forcing the evacuation of 10 occupants in 6 apartments. Because of the close proximity to the WestConnex tunnelling project, that sparked a large response and exclusion zone as engineers tried to figure out what had caused this building to shift.
The one next door is the one that has started, the tiles are popping up, just flying out. The tiles on the floor, they just start to crack and fly in the air.
Now, after a 5-hour investigation, engineers have declared that this structure is now safe and residents have been allowed to return. Any link to WestConnex tunnelling has been ruled out, and it seems the movement and damage has been limited to just one apartment.
We have discovered some moisture underneath the tiles, so we are confident it is not structural related.
So certainly following what was an extremely large emergency response here this morning, there are now a lot of relieved residents here.
Next in 7 News, why President Trump has decided to cancel the Republicans' National Convention. And a huge blaze as a tyre recycling plant erupts in flames. In a surprise move, President Trump says he's scrubbed plans to hold the Republican National Convention in Florida next month because of coronavirus. Trump says he'll probably deliver his acceptance speech for the Republican nomination online. From Washington, US Bureau Chief Ashley Mullaney has more.
Well, the pandemic has dealt a blow to the president's campaign plans. Donald Trump announcing today he is cancelling the Republican National Convention in Florida over safety concerns. As COVID-19 cases surge in the Sunbelt, Donald Trump announced at a press conference today it wasn't the right time to be holding an in-person convention to confirm his nomination for re-election. Instead, he said tele-rallies would be held and a speech in another format.
We have to be vigilant. We have to be careful. And we also have to set an example. I think setting the example is very important. It's hard for us to say we're going to have a lot of people packed in a room and then other people shouldn't do it.
The move, a dramatic about faced by the president. 2 months ago, he moved the convention from North Carolina after the governor there restricted the crowd size. In normal times, the event would be packed with adoring supporters. With his signature rallies on hold for now, he's spent the last 3 days at the White House podium updating Americans on the health crisis. And today, praising federal agents sent into Portland after 50 days of clashes between police and protesters. The mayor there tear-gassed himself overnight after meeting with demonstrators. The president is set to send in more federal agents into Chicago as the city deals with a surge in violence. A law and order agenda now central to Donald Trump's pitch for re-election.
A massive fire has ripped through a so-called tyre mountain in the United States. Authorities say a piece of equipment had caught alight at the recycling centre in Colorado and then quickly spread to 7 piles of tyres. It took more than 5 hours and 40 firefighters to contain the inferno. The tyre mountain is the largest landfill in North America. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have donated more than $3 million to frontline services in the UK. The grants, which will also go towards mental health, will be split between 10 charities. Will and Kate met with emergency responders earlier this week about the challenges that they face. Next in 7 News Sport with Matt Shervington, including a COVID-19 scare for Carlton, the Western Bulldogs climb into the top 4, and why this remarkable put down from the Eels star Blake Ferguson was ruled a no try.
Welcome back. West Tigers forward Michael Cheekham is back at home recovering after a terrifying on-field seizure in last night's loss to Parramatta at Bankwest Stadium. The 28-year-old was rushed to hospital following an attempted tackle on Sean Lane.
He's okay. He spoke to everyone before he left. He's a great character, and all the boys are really fond of him too. So, they're a little concerned there.
Former Tiger Ryan Maddison ended his night early due to concussion, while it was a mixed night for returning Mitch Moses, who scored a brilliant chip and chase try, but also botched a conversion. Parramatta won 26-16, but Blake Ferguson's try drought continues. The Origin Stars' miraculous put-down in the dying minutes was disallowed due to a knock-on earlier in the play. Trent Robinson says Sonny Bill Williams will be a valuable addition to the Roosters' quest for a premiership three-peat. There are still a number of hurdles to overcome to get Sonny Bill back to Bondi. The dual international hopes to return to Australia next week.
We're not looking for anything spectacular, although he's capable of it. We're looking for a guy to add value to our squad.
And South's coach Wayne Bennett has confirmed Ethan Lowe and James Roberts will both miss the rest of the season with neck and pectoral injuries. Cairns is the latest destination for the AFL, with 2 teams to be based in far north Queensland later this season. Carlton has revealed a COVID scare forced young forward Harry Mackay from the training track yesterday after the club was told his latest coronavirus test result hadn't come back yet.
It was really disappointing because obviously we wanted Harry out there to train, but we got a phone call from the AFL saying that we had to wait till his results came through.
Mackay has since been cleared to play against North Melbourne tomorrow. Last night, the Bulldogs held off a fast-finishing Gold Coast to jump inside the top 4, and tonight it's the grand final rematch between the Giants and Richmond, live on your screens here on 7. Western Sydney Wanderers striker Kristen Hamilton has claimed the Julie Dolan Medal for the W League's best player. In the UK, thousands of Leeds fans lined the streets defying social distancing protocols to celebrate their team's promotion back into the Premier League.
Thank you very, very much for your incredible support. The next time we see you down here, we'll be
Leeds developed a huge following here in Australia back in the 90s and early 2000s when Socceroos Harry Kewell and Mark Viduka were at their peak. They were relegated from the top flight 16 years ago. And Sal, it was an amazing time for the Australians at Leeds United, and nice to see them back in the top flight again.
16 years, that vision, it feels like just yesterday. All right, thanks for that, Matt. Next in 7's Morning News, we'll have the national weather forecast with David Brown. Let's get a check of the weather forecast now with 7 News meteorologist David Brown. Brown, we've got some wild weather on the way, haven't we?
Oh, indeed, Sally. But look, I must say at the moment, though, it's a beautiful winter's day for most of the country, but we are keeping an eye on a potential storm developing off the New South Wales coast. In fact, we'll pick it up on radar right now. It's driving areas of rain through northern parts of New South Wales and the southeast corner of Queensland. We're keeping an eye on this developing trough. As we go to the latest model run, you'll notice some multiple cells starting to appear within this trough during Sunday. Yeah, the main eye is right in here, so the harbour city, yep, wet and windy coastal gales this Sunday. Let's go to the weather wall now. In fact, we're popping into Brisbane. Cloudy, just further periods of rain at times today, and a high of around about 19 degrees. Sydney, well, it's looking absolutely beautiful. Dry, sunny, forecast maximum around 18 degrees. Melbourne, right now, it's cold and clear, 11 degrees. Today's top around 13. And as we have a look at the city of Churches, also blue sky, up heading for around 18 degrees. Latest satellite data indicates a cold front entering the Great Australian Bight. This system is running running out of steam, what it will do is inject some cold air into the middle atmosphere, and that's what will lead to the intensification of this trough over the weekend. But tomorrow, it should be sunny in Adelaide, around 17 degrees. Melbourne generally fine, around 13. Showers building in Sydney during the second half of the day. Might see some storms as well. 18 degrees, that's the latest weather. More at 4, Sally.
Thanks, Barney. See you then. And that is 7 News to Now. We'll be back shortly with a coronavirus update with the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison. I'm Sally Barry. Thanks for your company. Have a good day.